In today's video, I'm going to be going over all of the races and classes in the full launch of Solasta Crown of the Magister. Big shout out to Tactical Adventures for giving me early access to the full build of the game. So some of you guys will be watching this a day before the actual game comes out, but what you're seeing in this video is what you should see on the official launch. This video is quite long. I go in depth into a lot of the races and classes and also offer a bit of insight. But if you're still confused after this video, make sure to watch my beginner's guide to character creation video, which should be out within 24 hours of the launch of this video. If you guys end up enjoying this video, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. And shit, what was I supposed to say? Let's get right into it. Welcome to Solasta's racial selection screen. As you guys can see, we have 5 different races that we can choose from, but 3 of these races are parent races and they offer 2 sub-race choices. So we have the dwarf, which consists of the hill dwarf and the snow dwarf, the half-elf, the human, the elves, which consist of the high elf and the sylvan elf, and then the halflings, and you can choose between a marsh halfling and an island halfling. If we start with the dwarves in the top left here, you'll notice on the top right of the screen that we have a section labeled as dwarf. So these are racial features that will be present for all dwarves, meaning the hill dwarf and the snow dwarf. And then below that we have the subrace specifics, which are class features that will get added on top of the dwarven base features. So all dwarves get to move 5, and what that means is they get to move 5 cells on their turn in combat. And if you take a look at the half-elf, they get to move 6. The dwarves and the halflings are both smaller statured creatures, so they technically don't take as long of strides, I guess you could say, and they can't move as far on their turn. So to make sure that you keep that in mind if maneuverability is going to be something that you really need with whatever class or character that you're playing. All dwarves get a +2 to Constitution, making this race in general a bit more tankier than the other races. Constitution is an ability that all classes will make use of because it helps with your hit points, and it also helps spellcasters maintain concentration, among a couple other benefits. But Constitution works basically with all classes, so in this regard a dwarf can be good with most classes. Dwarves also get mitigation and resistance to poison damage. They get dwarven combat training, which makes them proficient with the battle axe, the hand axe, and the warhammer. So if you really want to use one of those weapons, you might want to choose a dwarf so you can get that proficiency bonus when you're using those weapons. Now keep in mind, if we go to the class screen here, some of the classes such as the fighter and the ranger, they have proficiency with simple and martial weapons, so they already have proficiency in the battle axe and those dwarven weapons, so you might not need to choose the dwarf race just to get those weapon proficiencies. Now if we take a look at the hill dwarf specifically, you can see that hill dwarfs also get a +1 to wisdom, making this racial choice really good for classes that use wisdom as their primary ability score, such as the cleric. And also the ranger, because the ranger uses wisdom for their spell casting. Even though wisdom might not be your primary ability score, it will likely be one of the ability scores that you boost up more so than some of the other ones. Hill dwarves also get a +1 hit point per level, which is called dwarven toughness, making this a really tanky racial and subracial choice. They get dark vision, which is always useful in these games. Sometimes it's hard to choose a race that doesn't offer dark vision. And now if we go to the snow dwarf gets a +1 to dexterity instead of that +1 to wisdom, making them really good for classes that use dexterity as their primary ability score, such as rogues, rangers, maybe a dexterity based fighter. Now dexterity can be useful by all classes because it also helps with your initiative and your armor class, unless you're wearing heavy armor. But technically, if you want to optimize your character, you're going to want to make sure that your primary ability score at least gets a boost in this when you're making your racial decisions. Also, snow dwarves get proficiency with heavy crossbows, they get dark vision, and they get a +2 to Constitution saving throws, just another little added tanky type bonus there. Half-elves are a really good racial choice for almost every single class, and I'll explain why here in just just a second. Half-Elves get to move 6 cells on their turn, which is pretty standard, same as the human and the High Elves and the Sylvan Elves. And they get a +2 to Charisma, which can help mostly with dialogue situations. Now, dialogue isn't as important in this game as it is in, say, Baldur's Gate 3, because you can't really change the outcome of the story in Solasta, but it still can help with that, and it can also help with some saving throws. And of course, I can't leave out that the Paladin class uses Charisma as its spellcasting ability. The Half-Elf is just hands down the best choice for the Paladin class if you really are looking to optimize as much as you can. And now the best thing about the Half-Elf is that you get to increase 2 other scores by 1 point each. So basically, the Half-Elf can work with every class really well, because you can make sure to boost your 2 primary ability scores even if you don't care about Charisma. For example, if you're playing a rogue and you don't care about Charisma, you can still boost Dexterity and Constitution, or maybe even Intelligence if you're going to play an Arcane Trickster rogue with the Half-Elf. So there's a lot of customization available when you choose this racial choice. Half-Elves also get to choose any 2 skills out of all the skills in the game. So if you're really into making sure that your character can handle a variety of different situations outside of combat, the Half-Elf can offer a great racial choice for that. They get Dark Vision and also Fey Ancestry, which gives you advantage against charms and immunity to magical sleep, so it's a nice little added bonus. Maybe not core to your racial choice, but it definitely helps. You don't want to be put to sleep while in battle, which will happen in Solasta. Now on to everyone's favorite. I'm just kidding, it's not everyone's favorite. The human. And as you guys can see, the reason why it's typically not anyone's favorite choice, I mean, some people out there love the human choice, is because you really don't get anything special with the human. The best thing about the human is that it goes great with every single class. So if you don't like some of the racial choices and you can't find one that really optimizes with your class choice, the human's always there for you, because you get a +1 to all ability scores, and this will basically allow you to get that boost that you need in all of your primary ability scores. The problem is you don't get any of those extra nice features like Dark Vision or Fey Ancestry or that Dwarven Toughness. So you really, it's kind of a weak choice, but at the same time, it works decent with all the classes, if that makes sense. Humans get to move 6 cells just like the Half-Elves and the High Elves. Now on to the Elves. So all Elves get a +2 to Dexterity, making them excellent for those Dexterity based classes such as the Rogue, Ranger, and a Dexterity based Fighter. Like I said, Dexterity works well with basically every class. Even a class that's going to wear heavy armor, Dexterity will help with your initiative order, and also Dexterity saving throws from spells such as Fireball. So the Elf is really good with Dexterity based classes, but can work great with most classes. Elves also get Fey Ancestry just like the Half-Elf. They get Dark Vision and Keen Senses, which gives you proficiency in the Perception skill, which is a great skill basically in every CRPG. It makes you able to spot things that you might have missed before, which can save your life or maybe give you some extra treasure. And Elves also get Trance, which is 4 hours of meditation are sufficient to rest. And from what I understand, this is mostly just for crafting purposes, as the other races need 8 hours of sleep. Elves only need 4 hours of meditation, and the other 4 can be used for crafting. Now, the High Elf specifically gets a +1 to Intelligence, making this really good for your Wizard class. As a Wizard, your primary ability is going to obviously be Intelligence, and the High Elf provides this benefit. Now you also have the Fighter, which can become a Spellblade, and as a Spellblade you will use Intelligence, so the High Elf can work great with a Spellblade Fighter. And also the Rogue has a subclass or archetype called the Shadowcaster, which is like the Arcane Trickster in D&D, and that also uses Intelligence, so keep that in mind if you want to play one of those archetypes. High Elves also get to choose 1 extra wizard cantrip if you're playing a wizard. That's why I say extra. You get 1 wizard cantrip, so this is really cool even for classes. Even if you don't play as a wizard, as a High Elf, you get that extra cantrip, which I don't know what choices there are off the top of my head, but it's kind of cool to have a cantrip, especially even if you're playing a class that maybe doesn't actually use magic traditionally, like just a basic fighter. High Elves also get Elf Weapon Training, which gives you proficiency in longsword, short bow, and longbow. Now the Sylvan Elf also gets those proficiencies as well. The reason why this is important is because some of you guys will want to use short bows or longbows, and the class that you choose might not offer that proficiency, of course, unless you're playing as a fighter, ranger, and I think Paladin also has proficiency in all weapons. but maybe you're playing as a cleric and you want to have a backup bow. Maybe you're playing as a rogue. A rogue is a really good choice with the elf for this reason, because the rogue does not have proficiency with any bows unless you choose the elven race. And now on to the sylvan elf. The sylvan elf gets a +1 to wisdom. So the high elf got the +1 to intelligence, making it great for the wizard class. Now the sylvan elf gets that +1 to wisdom, making this a really good choice for the ranger because of the dexterity boost, and also rangers use wisdom as their spellcasting ability. But also it can be a pretty good choice for your cleric if you want to play as a cleric which uses wisdom as their spellcasting ability. Sylvan elves also get that weapon training that will give you the bows, and they get sylvan adaptability, which makes you proficient in the survival and athletic skills, and you also get advantage on survival when hunting. So these are really kind of ranger type skills. So if you're into being closer to nature and stuff like that, then you might like these skills even if you're not playing as a ranger as well. All right, now on to the final racial choice, last but not least. You gotta love a halfling. Who hates halfling? Does anybody hate halflings? If you do, let me know below in the comments so I can ban you off this channel. So all halflings can only move 5, which is the same as the dwarves because they're a smaller race, and all halflings also get the +2 to dexterity, similar to the elves, and this will make them good for all classes that use dexterity, which is basically every class. But they'll be even better, I guess you could say, more optimized in classes like rogues, rangers, and of course dexterity based fighters. Now all halflings also get brave, which gives you advantage on saving throws against being frightened. It's a nice little added benefit. You probably won't choose the halflings just for that, but it's a nice touch to the race. And they also get lucky, which is the legendary racial feature for halflings. Really good racial feature, maybe one of the best in the game, and maybe in all of D&T in general. So for lucky, when you roll a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you then will re-roll that and use the new roll. So for example, if you're the only one alive in your party as a halfling and the enemy's really low health, you only need 1 hit and it will drop, but unfortunately your attack roll comes out to be a 1. Well, if you're playing as a halfling, the lucky feature comes into play, and that 1 will get automatically re-rolled behind the scenes, of course, giving you a much better chance on that second roll of actually rolling equal to or greater than the enemy's armor class number, meaning that you'll get an attack on the enemy. This has nothing to do with the damage roll, only the attack roll in this instance. But lucky is also applied to saving throws and ability checks, just not damage rolls. Halflings also get halfling nimbleness, which means you can move through the space of any creature that is of a larger size than you. So halflings can't move as far as half-elves, humans, and elves, but they can move through basically most of the spaces that other party members might be taking up. So if you need to get somewhere, you can go right through where the human is standing, for example, giving them a bit more of maneuverability. How did I just say that? I pronounced that pretty weird. Now on the marsh halfling specifically, you get a +1 to constitution. So now you have a +2 to dexterity and a +1 to constitution. Both are abilities that almost every class can make use of, but the marsh halfling probably goes best with the rogue, ranger, and maybe a dexterity based fighter. Marsh halflings also have swamp, which is areas with marshes and ponds and a human atmosphere are considered swamp terrain. So I think what this means, I'm sorry that I don't know this officially. I think that this means that those types of areas are not going to be considered difficult terrain. So when you're in swampy areas, you're never going to be slowed down by the environment. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments. I wish I looked this up, but I'm already so far into this video now. And marsh halflings also get dark vision, which is always great. Island halflings obviously have the base halfling features, but now they get a +1 to charisma. So charisma can be really good for the Paladin class, which uses charisma as its spellcasting ability. And you also get rope dancing, which gives you advantage on dexterity checks. Just a nice little added benefit, something that you don't really need to focus on. Just take it. It's a nice little thing to get as your character. Now on to the moment a lot of you guys have probably been waiting for, and that's the classes. There's 6 different classes in Solasta: the Cleric, Fighter, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, and Wizard, and we'll likely be getting the Sorcerer in a future DLC. Now if you include the subclasses, which are the archetypes and the domains, there's actually 24 different subclass choices that you can go down, which is pretty cool, and I'm going to quickly touch over all of them. I won't get too crazy in depth because each class kind of needs its own guide, and this video would end up being 3 hours long. But let's start off with the Cleric. The Cleric's spellcasting ability is Wisdom, so make sure to show Wisdom some love when you're assigning ability scores, and also Constitution, because Constitution is going to help keep your Cleric alive and help your Cleric maintain concentration on spells that require concentration, such as Bless. And Strength is typically the third primary ability score for Clerics, as it complements their melee weapon. You could do this with Dexterity and use versatile weapons. Now, if we take a look over here on the right, you can see that Clerics have proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. They have proficiency in light armor, medium armor, and shields. You'll notice that you don't see heavy armor on here, but if you want to be a heavy armor wearing Cleric, if we take a look at one of the divine domains here, the life domain, you'll see that you gain that proficiency. Also, Clerics have proficiency in simple weapons, and simple weapons in this game are basically weapons that can be found in the hands of commoners, such as clubs, maces, and daggers, while martial weapons are the weapons that require more skill and training to use, such as scimitars, long swords, and weapons like that. So the Cleric doesn't have proficiency in martial weapons, but if you choose a certain divine domain, such as the battle domain, you'll actually gain that martial weapon proficiency, and you can use any weapon that you want with the Cleric. Also keep in mind that your racial choice will likely give you some of those weapon proficiencies as well. For skills, Clerics get to choose 2 out of History, Insight, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. And of course, Clerics are spellcasters, and they have access to the Cleric spell list. Clerics use something called prepared spells, which basically means that you're going to have access to all of the Cleric spells depending on what level you're at, but you have to choose which ones you want prepared each day. So you can only take a certain amount of spells with you each day, and when you rest, you can swap these in and out. And if you're wondering kind of what spells Clerics end up getting, they get a lot of healing spells, a lot of radiant type spells, divine type spells, and stuff like that. All right, on to the part that everybody is excited for, is your subclass choice with the Cleric, which is your divine domain. And if we take a look here, we can choose right away at level 1 Elemental Fire, Ice, Lightning, Sun, Battle, Law, Life, Oblivion, and Insight. I won't get too in depth into these, but I will give you a quick oversight as to how they work. So Elemental Fire, Ice, and Lightning are all very similar in how they're laid out, but obviously depending on what you choose will be more focused on that specific element. Now at level 1 for all of the divine domains, you're going to get domain spells, and these are going to be spells that are prepared at all times. So your normal Cleric spells, you have to swap them in and out when you rest. The domain spells are always going to be available for use when you're out adventuring and in combat, as long as you have a spell slot to use them. Some of these spells are already going to be Cleric spells that you would have had access to even if you didn't choose the specific divine domain, but like I said, they're going to be prepared at all times now. And some of these spells are also not Cleric spells that can really come in handy and be super powerful. The Fire, Ice, and Lightning domains all share the same domain spells, but they start to differ as we go down as you level up. For example, even at level 1 as a Fire Cleric, you get the bonus cantrip of Firebolt, while as an Ice Cleric, you get Ray of Frost, and a Lightning Cleric, you get Shocking Grasp. I won't go over everything, but at level 2, this is a really important level for all of the domains as well, because you get something called Channel Divinity, which is kind of like a really renowned feature for the cleric class in general. And Channel Divinity is going to allow you to use a special domain specific ability once per long rest, and it's not going to cost you a spell slot. So you're channeling your divinity, but you can only do it once a day until you reach, I think, level 6, and then you can do 2 a day. And each domain is going to offer a different type of Channel Divinity. For example, the Fire Cleric gets the Fire Burst, which is a 3d8 fire damage spell. The Ice one gets Ice Lance, and the Lightning one gets Lightning Blade. And at level 6, 8, and 10, you also get some more domain specific features. Level 10 is shared across all of the domains, but I don't quite know how it works. We'll have to see when I actually get a cleric to level 10, and that is Divine Intervention. You attempt to request the help of your deity with a success chance of 1% per cleric level. No idea how they implemented this. It'll definitely be fun to find out. If we take a look at the Sun Cleric, you get a lot of these burning, radiant type spells and abilities. The Battle Cleric, you get that martial weapon proficiency, and you also get some really good battle type spells like Magic Missile, which is one of the best D&D spells in general. as a law cleric. I don't really know how to explain this one. The game explains it as the law domain focuses on protecting the innocent and punishing the guilty. You get heroism, shield, branding, smite, guardian of faith. At level 6, word of the law, which is break the spellcasting concentration of an enemy. Now the life domain cleric is the bread and butter of the cleric class. If you want a true healer in your party, they get a bunch of healing spells for their domain spells that are going to be prepared at all times. At level 1, bless and cure wounds are already cleric spells, but now you never have to worry about preparing them. And they get a great channel divinity, which is called preserve life, restore hit points to 1 or more allies within 6 cells. So this can be an AoE heal. This is a really good healing class, the best in Solasta and probably the best actually in D&D in general. The Oblivion cleric is more focused on kind of dark warlocky type spells, which is really cool. Sleep, blindness, vampiric touch, black tentacles, these warlock darker type things. Definitely an interesting one to check out. And the last one is the Insight cleric, which is more focused on some non-combat activities, like being really good in ability checks, advantage on ability checks using Arcana, History, and Nature. And then you get all of these kind of insight type spells that will help you in combat but also outside of combat. Definitely take a deep look into each of these domains before you make your domain choice, and if I do an in-depth cleric guide, I'll make sure to go over everything. Of course, keep in mind that as you level up, you're also going to gain the general cleric class features for all clerics, and the spells that we went over right there are only the domain spells, so you're still going to have access to all of the cleric spells regardless of the divine domain that you choose. At level 2, all clerics will end up getting a channel divinity called Turn Undead, which will cause undead creatures to flee from you, and when you reach level 5, that Turn Undead will actually start instantly destroying undead creatures that end up failing at their saving throw. These are general class cleric features. And now on to the fighter. As a fighter, your primary ability scores are likely going to be strength and constitution, maybe dexterity if you want to be a dexterity based fighter and focus a little bit more on ranged combat, or use melee weapons that have the finesse property on them, such as scimitars. But for the most part, it's going to be strength and dexterity and also constitution to keep your fighter beefy and able to survive. Fighters get saving throw proficiency in strength and constitution. They have proficiency in light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, and shield, so they can use basically anything that they want. They have smithing, which is you are trained to craft basic ammunition with smith's tools, arrows, and bolts, so you don't always have to buy arrows if you're going to do a lot of range combat. And for weapon proficiencies, they have proficiency in simple and martial weapons, which is basically all weapons. So fighters can wear any armor they want. They can use shields and use any weapons that they want. For skills, fighters get to choose 2 from acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. And they also get to choose a fighting style, and if we go further into character creation, I'll quickly show you that. We got archery, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, protection, and 2 weapon fighting. You're obviously going to choose a fighting style that complements the weapons that you want to use. If you want to be a range-based fighter, if you choose archery, you'll get a +2 bonus to attack rolls with ranged weapons. If you want to be a dual-wielding fighter, 2 weapon fighting will allow you to add your ability modifier to the damage of the second attack. And you guys can kind of go through the other ones. I think that's the basic premise for what's going on here. And the last feature that you'll get at level 1 as a fighter is called Second Wind, where you'll regain 1d10 plus your level hit points as a bonus action, and you can use this once per short rest. The uses might increase as you level up. I don't know off the top of my head, but that's basically how it works. It's a nice little tanky type thing that a fighter can have to keep them alive longer. You'll also notice that it says martial archetypes here, but you don't actually get to choose your archetype or subclass until you reach level 3. And as a fighter, you can be a champion, a mountaineer, or a spellblade. Now the spellblade is very similar to the eldritch knight in D&D, so you're going to be a fighter that also gets some wizard spells. So if you want to be a spellblade, you're going to invest some of your ability score points likely into intelligence, because intelligence is going to be the ability that you use to cast your spells. And like the domains with the cleric, at further levels you'll get other archetype specific features. At level 7 you get into the fray as a spellblade, and level 10 you get spell tyrant. Target a creature and move it 1 cell in any direction if it fails a strength saving throw. The Mountaineer archetype is going to complement those who really want to fight in close quarters and use shields. And as you'll see here, right when you choose this at level 3, you get Shield Swipe, which is advantage on shove attempts when using a shield. Tunnel Fighter, while using a shield, gain +2 to AC when you have a wall on one of your 4 sides. So this is that close quarters, small space fighting that a badass Mountaineer fighter, I guess, would do. At level 7, you get Close Quarters, which is another benefit to being really close to enemies. And at level 10, you get Shield Push. And a champion fighter is kind of more your classic fighter, and you're going to get a feature called Improved Critical, which means your weapon attacks score a critical hit on a roll of 19 now on top of 20, which is going to help in the long run. You're going to roll a lot of 19s over your course of Solasta. At level 7, you get Remarkable Athlete. I won't get too much into that, but at level 10, you get to choose an additional fighting style. So maybe you chose archery, but you also like to get up close to enemies, or if an enemy gets in your face, now you can switch to, let's say, 2-weapon fighting and pull out your 2 swords, and you're going to get the benefit from the 2-weapon fighting as well. So the champion is just an all-around, like, just badass fighter, while the Mountaineer focuses more on tight spaces and shields, and the Spellblade focuses on a bit of magic. Like I said with the Cleric, make sure to keep in mind that as you level up as a fighter, you're also going to gain the general class features that fighters get, such as Action Surge, which will allow you to use 2 actions in 1 turn, and you can do this once per short or long rest. And also at level 5, you get Extra Attack, which allows your fighter to use the attack action twice in 1 turn, just dishing out some crazy damage. All right, now on to many people's favorite class, the Mighty Paladin. So the Paladin uses Charisma for its spell casting. So Charisma is going to be one of your primary ability scores, alongside Constitution, which will help with your HP and help you hold concentration on certain spells, and then probably Strength to complement your melee weapon. As a Paladin and even a Cleric, you'll probably be using your weapons a little bit more than you expect, because you're going to run out of spell slots, especially in a game like Solasta, where it's a lot harder to take a long rest than a game like Baldur's Gate 3. Paladins have saving throw proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma. They have proficiency in all armor and shields and all weapons, so you can wear any type of armor and use any weapons that you want. You'll probably be wearing heavy armor as a Paladin though. Paladin skills, you get to choose 2 from Athletics, Insight, Intimidation, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. You get Divine Sense, which reveals Celestials, Fiends, and Undead. So if you kind of have any questions about a certain character or a creature, you can use Divine Sense to reveal the truth. You also get a Healing Pool, which works for Lay on Hands, Neutralize Poison, and Cure Disease. So the Healing Pool is a pool of healing power, 5 points per Paladin level. So at level 1, you'll have a healing pool of 5, at level 2, 10, and level 3, you'll have 15 points, and so on. And then you can use certain features such as Lay on Hands to draw from that healing pool, and for Lay on Hands you'll spend points from your healing pool to restore lost HP to yourself or your party members. You can also use Neutralize Poison, which will pull 5 points from the healing pool and use it to neutralize poison, and also Cure Disease, which will pull 5 points from your healing pool to cure 1 disease. Now let's talk about the Sacred Oaths for the Paladin, and like the fighter, you won't get access to these subclasses until you reach level 3. Now keep in mind that you're going to get access to the Paladin spell list, which will be spells that you'll prepare like you do with the Cleric, but you're also going to get devotion specific spells. So if we look at the Oath of Devotion right here, you can see there's devotion spells, same with the Motherland and the Tiamat Paladin. So these devotion spells are going to be always prepared, just like with the Cleric domain spells. And with the Oath of Devotion, you get spells such as Shield, Lesser Restoration, Revivify. The Oath of Devotion is kind of like your classic cliche Paladin, I guess you could say. And you also get Channel Divinity with your subclass choice here, which acts similarly to the Cleric's Channel Divinity. It's going to be something that you can use once per long rest, and it's not going to cost you a spell slot, and it's going to be kind of like a special little feature. For the Oath of Devotion, you get Sacred Weapon, which allows you to bless 1 weapon, and for 1 minute you get to add your Charisma modifier to hit with that weapon, so it makes it a lot more powerful, and it also allows your weapon to emit light, and and you get Turn the Unholy, which forces fiends and undead to basically flee from you. At level 7, as an Oath of Devotion Paladin, you get Aura of Devotion. Friendly creatures in the aura cannot be charmed while you are conscious. So this is kind of like your classic Paladin. The Oath of the Motherland Paladin, just like the Devotion, gets their special devotion spells. And for the Motherland, you get spells like Bane, Burning Hands, Fireball, Dispel Magic. So the Motherland Paladin is kind of destructive and fire based. For the Motherland's Channel Divinity, you get Fiery Wrath, which is allows you to set some targets on fire. You get Fiery Presence, which allows you to blind opponents. So it's all kind of just fire based if you're into that sort of paladin. And at level 7, you get Volcanic Aura. Friendly creatures in the aura gain fire resistance and a +1 to AC. The Oath of Tirmar Paladin are paladins descended from the Tirmarian Inquisition, and basically you're going to get a bunch of more control type spells such as Sleep, Hold Person, Blindness. For Channel Divinity, you get Golden Speech, which is going to be useful out of combat, and it gives you advantage on Persuasion and Intimidation checks for 1 hour. And you get Scourge of the Hidden, which is a Channel Divinity to deal 1d6 additional radiant damage on attacks, which hits opponents with either natural shapeshifting or dark vision. So basically the Oath of Tirmar Paladin gives you some non-combat benefits as well as combat benefits. And at level 7, you get Aura of Truth. Friendly creatures in the aura gain superior dark vision and +2 perception, which can actually be very useful. So just like with the Cleric, make sure you look into all of these oaths and find one that you feel like is going to complement what you want. And like I said, the Paladin's still going to have the Paladin spell list, which is going to have all sorts of classic Paladin spells, a lot of heals and radiant divine type spells like the Cleric gets, but your subclass choice is going to give you those extra prepared spells to really let you specialize in something. And of course, as you level up as a paladin, you get access to the general class features that all paladins get. At level 2, you'll get spellcasting. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but you don't get it until level 2. You'll also get Divine Smite, which allows you to add some extra radiant damage to a melee attack. It can be super powerful at the cost of a spell slot. You get to choose a fighting style, and eventually you'll get extra attack. The paladin's just a really good class. Like I said, some of the spells are similar to the Cleric spells. You'll get some healing spells and some more radiant type spells. It's a really great class, really strong class, and it was my main character for early access. Now it's time for the Ranger. So as a Ranger, your primary ability score is likely going to be Dexterity, as you'll be doing a lot of ranged attacks. If you want to fight in melee, you'll probably be using finesse weapons, which allow you to use Dexterity. And your secondary, or actually another one of your primary ability scores, will be Constitution to help you out with your HP, and of course concentration spells, which you will get some of those as a Ranger. And your third primary ability score will probably be Wisdom, because your spellcasting ability is Wisdom as a Ranger when you gain access to spellcasting. Rangers have proficiency in Strength and Dexterity saving throws. They can use light, medium armor, and shield, so they can't use heavy armor. They have smithing, which means you're trained to craft basic ammunition with smith tools, so you don't have to buy arrows as much, you can craft them. You'll have proficiency with simple and martial weapons, which means you can basically use all weapons. Ranger skills, you get to choose 3 from Animal Handling, Athletics, Insight, Investigation, Nature, Perception, Survival, and Stealth, so they have a lot of skills to choose from. Many of them are very useful, such as Perception and Stealth. And you also get to choose a favored enemy at level 1, which will give you advantage on ability checks towards the creature type that you choose, which is okay. I bet you most people don't really care about that, but the cool thing is that you get some additional damage against this creature type as well. And you can see we got a lot of choices here, from Aberration to Construct to Dragon, Elemental, Giant, Plants, Undead, etc. I don't really know what to tell you to choose, but I do know that there's a lot of undead in this game, so that's definitely a safe bet. And also at level 6, you'll get to choose another favored enemy. You also get Natural Explorer, which allows you to choose a certain type of terrain. And I'd have to test this to really be certain. I don't truly know the benefits that you're going to get in this game, but I would assume that you'll get like double proficiency bonus when you do ability checks that deal with the terrain that you're in. And you might also not suffer the effects from difficult terrain dealing with the terrain that you choose. And your choices go from forest, mountain, swamp, grassland, desert, and Arctic. The ranger archetypes you get to choose at level 3, which is your subclass choice, and you can choose between hunter, marksman, and shadow tamer. So hunter is probably the best in my opinion, and at level 3 you get hunter's prey, which allows you to choose a feature, either Colossus Slayer, Giant Killer, or Horde Breaker. So Colossus Slayer is probably the best in my opinion, and basically it allows you to deal an additional 1d8 damage when you make a weapon attack against a creature that is not at their hit point maximum. You get that extra 1d8 damage that adds up, especially when you have Hunter's Mark on top of that. You can have Giant Killer, which basically allows you to get like a free opportunity attack against a creature that is large size or larger than you. So I guess we could just say a giant. So if a giant swings at you, you're going to get almost a free attack to swing back, and it's going to cost a reaction if you want it to. If you want to use it, it'll cost you a reaction. And Horde Breaker allows you to take 2 attacks in one turn. If there's an enemy that you strike or shoot at, if they have another enemy within 1 grid square of them, then you get to actually shoot at both of the targets or take a swing at both of the targets. Only if there's an enemy within 1 grid square of the enemy that you're attacking, so that damage can also add up. Colossus Slayer is just really good to get that extra 1d8 damage, and a lot of targets that you attack are not going to be at their hit point maximum. At level 7 you get defensive tactics, which allows you to choose one of these following options: Escape the Horde, multi-attack defense, or Steal Will. So Escape the Horde basically helps your ranger get away from enemies without suffering from the opportunity attack. Multi-attack defense allows you, or gives you, more of a chance to resist an opponent's second attack against you if they're doing 2 attacks in one turn, and Steal Will gives you advantage against being frightened. Now, Marksman is kind of tailored towards those who definitely want to do ranged combat, but I still don't think it's as good as the Hunter, even with ranged combat. So as a Marksman, you get some additional proficiencies, but you also get Reaction Shot, which I did use in the game and is pretty good. So when a visible opponent 2 cells or more away from you attacks you with a ranged weapon or a spell, you can use your reaction to take a shot after the triggering attack. So basically your ranger is just going to be constantly shooting off these extra shots, and the damage absolutely does add up, and it's pretty good. At level 7 you get Step Back, which is going to allow you to use a bonus action to not provoke an opportunity attack if you need to get away. And then you get Recycler, which allows you to craft arrows every time you take a short or long rest. Not bad. I still think the Hunter is better. And then perhaps the coolest sounding one is the Shadow Tamer, but maybe the weakest in terms of, I don't know, just damage output, I guess you could say. At level 3 you get Tunnel Wisdom, which is in dim, light, or darkness you get advantage on dexterity saving throws. And you get Dark Slayer, which basically, when you attack a creature that has superior dark vision, so there's only certain creatures that actually have superior dark vision, you get to add your proficiency bonus to your damage. So that can be actually a nice boost in damage for sure, but it only works when you're attacking a creature that has superior dark vision. At level 7 you get Rope Grapple, which allows you to pull a creature towards you if they fail a strength saving throw. That's pretty cool. I haven't tried it before, but it could definitely be useful. And also you get Know the Darkness, which gives you advantage on stealth, perception, investigation checks when you're in dim or no light. So the Shadow Tamer is basically better than the other classes at being in the darkness and taking advantage of stuff like that. But like I said, you're probably going to get the least benefit out of that because the Hunter Colossus Slayer is just so damn good. And of course, as you level up, you'll gain the Ranger class features that all Rangers get. You'll get to choose a fighting style at level 2. You'll get access to the Ranger spell casting, and Rangers get spells that can be healing spells to control spells that summon vines to slow enemies. And of course, Hunter's Mark, which is one of the best Ranger spells hands down, where you mark an enemy and then you deal additional damage to that enemy. You'll end up getting extra attacks, so you can deal 2 weapon attacks in one turn. And I think that basically covers all of the important Ranger class features. Now on to the Stealthy Rogue. And bear with me guys, we're already 40 something minutes into this video. I'm starting to lose my voice. It's like 80 degrees in this room, but we got 2 more classes. I want to make sure I stay strong for these 2 and give you guys the information that you need. So for a Rogue, your primary ability score for 99% of Rogue players is going to be Dexterity, as you'll use Finesse, finesse weapons and ranged weapons, and there's a really good reason to do that, which we'll get to shortly. And your another primary ability score will probably be Constitution to help with your HP. And then if you get into the rogue archetype of Shadowcaster, which is basically like the fighter that gets some wizard spells, but this is the rogue that gets some wizard spells, you're going to also boost up your intelligence. So for saving throw proficiencies, you'll have it in dexterity and intelligence saving throws, both pretty good saving throws in combat. You'll have proficiency in light armor, so you won't be wearing medium or heavy armor as a rogue. And you'll have, for weapon proficiencies, simple weapons, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. So your weapons are kind of limited here, and if you really want to use bows and ranged weapons, you might want to consider being an elven rogue, so you can get the bow proficiencies from the elven race. You'll have proficiency in thieves tools, which will help with activities such as lockpicking. For skills, you'll choose 4 from acrobatics, athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, investigation, perception, performance, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth. Rogues are a skilled class, and you get to choose 4 from that list. It's the most skilled class in Solasta. And if we jump down to expertise, you get to select 2 proficient skills or tools to double their proficiency bonus. So not only do you get a ton of skills to choose from, you also get to double the proficiency bonus for 2 of them. So if you want to be an extra stealthy rogue, then use that for stealth, or you can use it for sleight of hand to help with pickpocketing, or maybe even perception. As a rogue, you get smithing, so you can craft your own arrows and bolts. And the rogue's famed feature is its sneak attack. With sneak attack, you'll deal 1d6 extra damage, 1d6 every 2 levels, to one creature you hit with advantage using a finesse or ranged weapon. So that's why dexterity is likely going to be every rogue's primary ability score, because why would you not use a finesse or ranged weapon and miss out on that sneak attack? Now, there are ways to still do that, but for the most part, everybody's going to be taking advantage of sneak attack. You get to do this once per turn, and you don't need advantage on your attack if an ally is next to the target that you're attacking. So this can be with a ranged attack or a melee attack. Get that extra damage. It really adds up, and it can be really good. Now for the rogue archetypes, you'll get to choose your subclass at level 3, and you'll choose between the Thief, Darkweaver, and Shadowcaster. So the Thief is kind of like the D&D rogue Thief. If you choose Thief at level 3, you get Fast Hands, which says Cunning Action allows you to take the Use an Object action. We haven't talked about Cunning Action. I'll talk about it after we talk about the archetypes. But basically, you can use an object as a bonus action with Fast Hands, and it allows you to maybe pull a lever, interact with something, or even apply poison to your weapon. Second story work makes climbing easier, and you can also jump further. And at level 9, Supreme Sneak gives you advantage on dexterity, stealth, ability checks, just making you much more stealthy. Advantage is kind of a big deal, and it will certainly make you succeed in almost all situations, especially with if you have the stealth proficiency and expertise on top of that. Now, Darkweaver is all about mobility and poison. You'll get proficiency with the Poisoner's Kit. You'll get what you got with the Thief, which makes climbing cost less movement. And you get Predator, which is when hitting an enemy on lower ground with a ranged weapon, add your proficiency bonus to the damage. So if you got high ground on an enemy as a rogue, you might as well take advantage of Predator and get that extra bonus damage of your proficiency bonus, which adds up as you get later in the game. At level 9, you get Poisonous, which makes it so when you deal damage to an enemy, at least 1 damage, it will force them to do a Constitution save, and if they fail, they will ultimately be poisoned for up to an hour, taking an additional 2d6 damage. Shadowcaster is your arcane trickster rogue in D&D, and you get spell casting from the wizard spell list. You get to learn some spells and cantrips from the divination, illusion, necromancy, and abjuration schools. And you also get shadow dodge, which means as a bonus action, you can teleport to a cell that you see within 5 cells. This is a really, really good mobility technique to have that can get you away from some frisky, is frisky the right word? Risky situations, I guess I'll say that. And it does recharge after a short rest. At level 9, you get Shadow Retribution, which is if you're targeted by a damaging spell, whether it damages you or not, you can cast a cantrip in reaction to the caster. So this kind of brings us back to the ranger that had that ability to shoot back attack at targets that shot at him with a ranged attack, him or her. But this time, if you're targeted by a damaging spell, you get to shoot back a cantrip, which will deal some nice extra damage and certainly add up over time. Now, the rogue's general class features that you'll gain as you level up include Cunning Action, which you'll get at level 2, which allows you to use your bonus action for the dash, disengage, and hide action. So you could move on your turn, use your action to dash even further, and then use Cunning Action as a bonus action to use dash again, but this time it's only costing a bonus action, so you can do dash twice in one turn. There's so many different combinations that you can do with Cunning Action. It's actually really useful for the rogue class. At level 5, you get Uncanny Dodge, which allows you to take half damage from someone doing an attack on you that you can see. You'll get Expertise for 2 more skills, so the rogue is just so good at skills in this game and can be such a useful party member to have. So you get to add your proficiency bonus, double the proficiency bonus, to 2 more skills on top of the 2 that you already chose at level 1. And you'll get something called Evasion, which allows your rogue to now take no damage if they succeed in their dexterity saving throw against certain area effects. So if this video is too long. So if a fireball comes in at your rogue or any other party members and they succeed at a dexterity saving throw, they would take half damage from the fireball. With Evasion as a rogue, you'll take no damage now. So I hope that kind of summarizes the general idea for the rogue class. And our final class, last but not least, is the wizard. As most of you guys know, Intelligence is a wizard spellcasting ability, so Intelligence is going to be your primary ability score to make sure that you show some love immediately when you're assigning ability score points. Constitution is also important for your wizard's HP. Wizards have rather low HP, so Constitution can help them be a little bit better, and it also helps with concentration spells. And Dexterity is also going to be important because Dexterity will be added to your Mage Armor spell. So wizards typically don't wear armor, but they can cast Mage Armor, which makes a wizard's armor class 13 plus their dexterity modifier. So if you have a decent dexterity modifier, the higher your armor class is going to be. And this goes for many of the other classes as well, because your dexterity modifier is added to your armor class as long as you're not wearing heavy armor. The wizard is proficient in Intelligence and Wisdom saving throws. They have Dagger, Dart, Quarterstaff, and Light Crossbow weapon proficiencies. You're not going to really be ever using your weapons as a wizard, so this stuff doesn't really even matter. For skills, wizards get to choose 2 from Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, and Religion. And now the wizard spellcasting is where they become a little bit more unique than the other spellcasters. So a wizard will choose a certain amount of spells as they level up that they want to add to their spell book. So they don't get all of the spells on the wizard spell list like a class like the Cleric would with their prepared spells. But the catch with the wizard is that you can keep adding to your spell book if you find those spells out in the world. So the wizard can learn so many spells even though you'll only choose a limited amount of them to learn each time you level up at the appropriate level. So you will prepare spells as a wizard, a limited amount of spells each day, but you're going to be able to learn so many spells. The wizard has the biggest spell list, and it has such high, I can't speak anymore, has such a variety of spells to choose from attack spells with Magic Missile, one of the best spells in the game, to control spells, to AoE, to Fireball. They just are the ultimate spellcasters, hands down, even though they're a little bit unique in how they go about doing that. Wizards get ritual casting like the Cleric did, so you'll be able to cast some spells as ritual spells, and ultimately they won't cost you a spell slot. This is not used for in-combat spells. And they get magical crafting. You've been trained to scribe magic scrolls and use enchanting equipment. So the scribe magic scrolls is adding all those spells to your spell book. So like I said, you only get to learn a limited amount of spells from the wizard spell list, but you also can just learn so many more and just pile them into your spell book and then prepare a certain amount of them each day. Now you get to choose your wizard's arcane traditions, which is your subclass at level 2. And the choices are Shock Arcanist, which is basically a battle mage, Lore Master, which is kind of like your more nerdy, knowledgeable wizard, and then Green Mage mixes ranger spells with the wizard, and we'll get into all of them right now. So the Shock Arcanist, you get to cast some spells from the war list, as Solasta calls it, and those will count as being cast at 1 slot level higher than the one you actually use. So you can cast some of these spells, Magic Missile, Burning Hands, Thunder Wave, at one spell slot higher, which obviously improves a lot of these, some of them drastically. At level 6, you get Arcane Fury, which allows you to add your proficiency bonus and intelligence bonus to your evocation spell damage. You can do this once per long rest, so you're just getting a damage boost on some evocation damage spells for the most part. And at level 10, you get Arcane Shock, which allows your wizard to temporarily restrain themselves, and by doing so, you then can use an attack spell, and your damage dice are always going to be above average. So if you really need to do some decent damage to a target, as long as you land your attack roll, you're guaranteed to do pretty good damage with this, but you're restraining yourself. Now there's also one more thing to keep in mind, that in return you make a constitution saving throw, and if you fail at that, you'll end up taking psychic damage yourself. But if you really need a certain amount of damage to finish off a fight, Arcane Shock might save the day. The Lore Master, like I said, is more of your knowledgeable book study wizard. And at level 2, you get advantage on Arcana, History, and Investigation ability checks. You get advantage to copy scrolls to your spellbook, making it easier for you to learn those new spells. Scroll and potion crafting costs and times are halved, so you're like kind of good at all those nerdy or craftier type things. At level 6, you get Spell Academic. You learn one additional spell each time you gain a level, so now you have access to more spells to learn. It's pretty typical for a knowledgeable wizard to learn more spells. And at level 10, you get Arcane Lore, which allows you to add your proficiency bonus to the number of spells you can memorize. This is basically just saying that you're going to be able to take more spells with you when you're out adventuring and in combat. You're going to have access to more spells as long as you have the spell slots. And you can also learn 2 additional cantrips from the wizard's list. And perhaps the most interesting subclass for the wizard is the Green Mage, which kind of turns your wizard into a nature-loving ranger. At level 2, you get Green Magic, which means that spells from the Green Magic list are now considered wizard spells. So you'll have access to all these extra nature-based spells that you wouldn't otherwise if you weren't a Green Mage, and you can absolutely learn these spells and then take them out there on your journeys. Spells include Animal Friendship, you got Hunter's Mark, Goodberry, Conjure Animal, Create Food, Freedom Movement, all these ranger based nature spells. I think this is really cool. I can't wait to try this. You get Smithing, which means you're trained to craft ammunition with a smith tool, so now you can use arrows and bolts. You might be wondering, well, why? The wizard's typically not going to use their weapons, but with the Green Mage, you're the Warden of the Forest. You get light armor proficiency, which will boost your armor class. You get proficiency with the short bow, and you get the fighting style of archery. So now using a bow is not actually necessarily a bad idea as a wizard, and if you gave your dexterity ability score some love like you should have as a wizard, you're going to be able to do a decent amount of damage. You also get Natural Explorer, believe it or not. At level 6, you get Entangling Shot, so when you shoot an arrow, it can transform into a Vine on Impact, which basically can restrain enemies from movement. And you also get at level 10 Leaf Scales. So when an attacker that you can see hits you with a ranged attack or spell, you can use your reaction to have the attack's damage against you. I think this is a really cool one. So, I mean, really, it's kind of self-explanatory. Whenever you get attacked by someone that you can see and they do a ranged attack or a ranged spell on you, ranged attack spell, you basically just get to have the damage. That's super powerful. I can't wait to try the Green Mage. My next party is going to have a Green Mage in at 100%. And there's really not much more to the wizard as you're leveling up. You just keep gaining more and more spells, powerful spells. It's a really versatile spellcaster class. You'll also get something called Arcane Recovery, though, which will allow you to regain some of your spell slots back after a short rest. So this is a nice feature that the wizards get. And in Solasta, it's kind of hard to rest. It's nothing like Baldur's Gate 3's resting system currently in Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access. So resting's kind of a big deal. So Arcane Recovery does play a big role, and it will help your wizard be able to cast more spells while you're out adventuring. And that will be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, I will be releasing a beginner's guide to character creation for Solasta, specifically very soon, and go over a lot of these different steps of character creation and explain them more in depth. Also, if you guys enjoy this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I do a lot of RPG and CRPG content and MMO content on this channel, and I also stream 5 to 6, sometimes 7 days a week. My streaming schedule is on my About section of this YouTube page. Thank you guys so much. Until next time.